All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with Kristen Nolan. Kristen, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, and I look forward to all the great stuff we're going to chat about.
I do too. I am looking, this is really a cool, I've been looking forward to this because this is really unique. I always start the podcast by giving a shout out to whoever it was that connected me with the person that I'm interviewing and stuff, because pretty much every single person who's ever been on here, I was introduced to by somebody else I already knew.
Yeah.
And this situation is very unique because, Kristen, you are one of those people that have been making a lot of introductions for me.
hmm Yeah.
And you work for a company called Interview Valet, which you work for high performing entrepreneurs help who want to get on podcasts, who want to get out there into the marketplace more and stuff. And I love getting emails from you and Brianna because
hmm
it's kind of like Christmas time. Every time I get an email from you, when I see it, I'm like, oh, I wonder what's going to be in here this time around because it's always going to be good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I love that.
and so you guys have made a lot of really great connections for me for great podcast guests over the last couple of years. And so now today, this is really cool because you are the one. I mean, you're the one that's been introducing folks to me, and now I get to interview you for the podcast. And I just think that's
Yeah.
awesome and
We're going to have a great time together today. I'm very
stuff.
excited.
Absolutely. So I want to start. I want to turn it over to you, Chris, and I want to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit and share, what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about
Mhm.
the work you get to do and the impact you're making in the world, and even give us some of the backstory of how you got into doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So my background is primarily in sales and hospitality. I think those two things have kind of developed me into the natural, person that I am in terms of, connecting with people and really thriving on that. In my role at Interview Valet, I get to help my clients strategize. We find them the perfect podcasts to help, connect them with people that could be potential clients, potential partners, different things like that. So I kind of look at myself as a connector and almost like a matchmaker too, because one of the
Mhm.
things that I look for is not just like, is it the right audience and is it the right topics, but is it the right host? Are you going to have a good conversation? Different things like that. So it's really an opportunity for me to get to know people better and then strategize on how we can make it a mutually beneficial conversation for them and the host and the listeners as well. I think the most inspiring thing to me is that I learned very early on in my career, I'm not just someone that's like booking people on podcasts, right? I want to be a partner. I want to be, in the trenches alongside of my clients where I always say, their success in this venture is my success, right?
Yeah.
If they're not successful, I'm not successful. So I have this drive to like want to get them clients, to want to connect them with people that can make a difference. It's Tom always says, better is better. So I want to make sure that I'm really connecting people that they're going to have value and learn something from.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
How long have you been with Interview Valet now?
Yeah, so I've been with Interview Valet for a little over 3 years.
Okay.
I took some time off. So my husband is military, and so we sort of traveled a bit earlier in his career. And so once we had kids, I stayed home.
Okay.
So I worked on my master's degree. So I have an MBA, and I stayed home to kind of, be a mom and make sure
Mhm.
that my kids were taken care of as my husband's schedule was a little crazier. And then I really went back into the workforce, to be honest. My son has a learning disability. And so my husband and I were looking into private schools. And so my husband was like, we can't afford this. This isn't something that we can do. And so I said, well, I'll go back to work. And so I came across Interview Valet, and it offers me the flexibility to be a mom,
Mhm.
to, take care of my kids in that way, but it also gives me an opportunity to nurture a side of myself that I love, right? I'm a hardworking person. I like to connect with people, right? So like, being a mom and kind of being at home and maybe a little secluded was a difficult period, right? I was blessed to be able to do it, but it was also kind of difficult because you can kind of lose um some of your identity, right? So this allows me to, tap into making those connections on a daily basis.
I love that. I love that. So much of that, it just resonates with me personally because that's the same exact stuff that just inspires me. I
Mhm.
love facilitating introductions and
Mhm.
connections that just lead to meaningful relationships for great entrepreneurs. I love being
Absolutely.
that guy.
Yep.
And so, yeah. So, okay. So now that we've got a little
Mhm.
bit of context set,
Yeah.
I'm going to reiterate the question around relationships for the benefit of our listeners. So, Kristen, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, as I sort of look back across my life, right? My grandma was a very important person. I think I my parents were young when they had me. My grandmother always encouraged me to learn, right?
Okay.
Education to her was, the most important differentiator of things. And so as I've sort of adapted that philosophy into my life, I look at every single interaction, no matter how small it is, as an opportunity to learn and grow.
Yeah.
So I would also say that like in a daily basis, I'm meeting people, whether it's walking past someone in the grocery store and, seeing the person at the checkout and having a conversation, or, meeting with clients and strategizing. So I think each opportunity in my day that I connect with someone is an opportunity for me to learn something. Everyone has something that they're good at. And so being able to just understand and get to the root of like, hey, there's something really cool that I can learn from this person, and really taking that to apply to my daily life and kind of how I see the world and how I view things. So I would say each of those connections.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's look. I mean, if we look back over your life,
Mhm.
I wanna look and there'll be an example of this. It'll just pop into your head and we can
Yeah.
dig a little bit deeper. So, if you look at these relationships and the relationships with your grandma and the other people
Mhm.
that you've had in your life, what's an example of a situation where you personally you got to make a really substantial impact, and maybe in the moment, maybe it even surprised you a little bit. You were like,
Mhm.
"Wow, look at that! Look at what happened there!" And I caused that to happen. And you also know, hands down, that would have never happened if not for your relationship with whoever that was. What's an
Mhm.
example of something like that, Kristen?
Yeah. So a more recent example, and I don't usually introduce clients to other clients, right? Like we're primarily introducing clients to podcast hosts.
Okay.
And I was strategizing with a client. She was new to podcasting. In fact, when she came to me, she was like, I've never listened to a podcast before. Someone told me that I needed to be a guest, and she showed up. So what I did is as I was strategizing with her, I said, hey, I have this client that's doing really, really well in the podcasting space. Check out her website, see what she's doing so you can get some ideas, and then use it as, sort of a baseline and change it up for what you want. Well, what ended up happening is I connected the two of them and they became like really great friends. They texted, they started going on family vacations together. It was just this like beautiful connection that we had made, where I felt like, it wasn't a normal connection that I make, but it was so great to see that the two of them could like work together and collaborate, to just grow in her business, grow in, sort of a mentorship and things like that. So it was really great to connect those two, especially because it wasn't something that like I would normally do or reach out. It was very organic. And I think those are the best kind of relationships, and the best kind of connections and introductions.
Yeah, yeah. So is there some things that have happened in their lives now since you made that connection that just that you're able to share? Or and if not, that's totally cool too and stuff. But
Yeah. Well, I think one of them was married and she went through a divorce, and so they sort of were able to connect and like help each other through that phase of life, right?
okay,
Like one of them was going through a divorce, the other one was a single mom, so they were able to sort of lean on and help each other in that regard.
that's
And
so awesome.
from a business perspective, they were they had their own businesses, but
Yeah,
they were very different businesses. So I think it really developed into like a partnership, and where they were able to say, hey, this is what's working for my business, you should try this. So it was kind of them bouncing ideas off of each other
yeah.
to grow their business.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. And you're right. You bring up such an important point there that we connect on a personal level.
Hmm.
We don't so much connect on a business level.
Yeah.
We connect by getting to know someone personally and like who they are and what makes them tick as a person, what
Hmm.
excites them, what causes them to want to get out of bed in the morning and do what they do each day.
Yep.
And once we have that real meaningful relationship where
Hmm.
where 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 there's trust in both character and trust in competence, and there's also alignment in values.
Hmm.
When those
Absolutely.
things are present, it is so easy to do business from there. And that's what you just described, was being able to, these two gals being able to do business together and talk about business because they had the personal relationship. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, one thing that is also really great is that, we can take a simple interaction and grow that, right? Like I
Yeah.
have clients, and as they're on podcasts, I will tell them, do not go and be a podcast guest and make this transactional.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop when you finish hitting record. It goes beyond that. And my clients that have been most successful have been the ones that build those relationships, that refer people to the host, that the host refers people to them. I had another client that was invited to be a keynote speaker, right? At, a large event. And so if we look at things as transactional, we miss so much because it's just a give and take.
Yeah.
Whereas if we have the ability to connect, get to know that person, build that trust with that person, the opportunities can be endless.
Yes.
And it's never from a place of like, what am I going to get from this? It's always from a place of like, what can I offer other people? How can I help other people? And then all of these other things just sort of come organically.
Yes. Absolutely. Amen. And the things, so I mean, I think back, the first big connection I made for these two guys was 13 years ago.
Hmm.
And within 8 months, they were hosting this big event together with there was about 300 entrepreneurs in attendance at that. And the it was back in Washington D.C. And the first morning of that event, I'm getting text messages from like three or four of my friends who were there at the
Hmm.
event. And they all essentially said the same thing. But my friend Paul messaged me. He's like, Kev, he's like, I'm at this event that Perry and Brian are hosting. And they're on stage doing their opening comments and they're talking about you. They're like, this thing wouldn't even have happened if not for you being the guy who connected them.
Yep.
And, those two guys went on to do such amazing things together. And then Paul said to me in his message after he shared that, he's like, Kevin, one never knows where a well planted seed will sprout. And
Hmm.
and that's what first got me thinking 13 years ago about wouldn't it be cool if I had a business where I just got to do that all the time?
Yeah.
And today that is my reality. I do that all the time. you know,
That's
and
amazing.
and those two guys, since then, oh my gosh, they have done so much amazing stuff together that's impacted like thousands and thousands and thousands of lives.
Yep.
And I'm still best friends with both of those guys to this day. And it is just it's really cool and it's just expanded from there. And
Hmm.
and it's seeing those things where like, oh, you need to talk with so and so because they could really help you with this. And then watching what happens as those relationships really start to expand and just grow. And when you connect resourceful entrepreneurs who
Mhm.
are all about, I want to use my business to make my biggest impact in this world, I mean, magic is going to happen, you know? It's,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the connection piece, right? And I'm sure that you put the two of them together and had absolutely nothing like that you were looking for in return, right? You're just doing it because you see that the two of them will have a great connection. And what a great feeling it is to know when you connect the people together, they have that connection and it creates this sort of ripple effect of, benefits to them, right? Like how
yeah,
great it's almost like as a parent seeing your kids succeed in something, right?
yeah,
You know, you want to you get to kind of have that front row seat on that connection and that success that they're able to build
yeah.
together. So that's really great also.
Yeah, and that is incredibly rewarding. You know, that I
Mhm.
mean that is what jazzes me. That is what inspires me to do what I do, is watching that kind of stuff unfold, you
Mhm.
know. And
Yeah.
well, okay. So I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. And I absolutely love the way, the person that you are, the way you show up, Kristen. You just have this this heart for giving and helping and serving others and stuff. And I'm sure now there's probably some folks listening to this that go, oh, you know what? Man, maybe I'd like to have Kristen working on my behalf, kind of like she does with Kevin and stuff.
Yeah.
And or maybe I want to get on some podcasts, or maybe I've got a podcast that I'm looking for some great guests for. And so, for anybody that's listening, that's kind of thinking about that, Kristen, how can they get more info? And any websites, any resources we can share with them?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find more information. You can find me and connect with me on social media through my landing page. It's
Okay.
interviewvalet with a V.com and it'll be /Kristen spelled out Kristen.
Okay.
And you'll find some additional resources there. There is an assessment on will podcast guesting work for you. We have a free copy of Tom's book. And you can learn more about being a podcast guest there. And then if you want to work with us at Interview Valet, there is a link to Tom's calendar there. Also all of my social media is there. I would love to connect with you. I would love to learn more about you. And I hope to chat with you guys soon.
Absolutely. Kristen, any last thing you feel led to share before we call it a wrap today?
No, I just want to thank you. Like I have had quite a few clients on your podcast and they enjoy having the conversation. I enjoy listening to the conversation because, as you mentioned, it's a great, podcasts are a great way to learn more about people, right? I like to listen to my clients' podcasts because people just sort of like leave little nuggets of information about themselves.
Yeah.
And so then I'm able to, connect with them and relate. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about podcasting is that, you really kind of get to know someone in a more intimate thing versus just, listening to them on the radio for 30 seconds, right?
Yeah.
You get to see
Yeah.
them in action and have a conversation. So I think that's really powerful. And, I just want to say thank you to you. Like you're doing an amazing, you have an amazing podcast and just, your drive to connect people, I think is so inspiring. And so I'm just excited to be a part of that, a small part of that.
Well, thank you so much again
Yeah.
for coming here today and sharing your story and your experience around this topic of relationships. I'm really excited to get this out there and share it with a lot of other folks. And so thanks again, Kristen. Really
Yeah.
appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
You bet.